Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Dr. Cybersecurity, where I bring in fascinating people in my network and I talk to them on topics that they want to talk about. I usually have no idea what they're going to ask me, to think of it as Toastmasters on steroids. My first guest today is a very good friend of mine for more than 2 decades, Celeste Stacey.
Hey, Monsoor, great to be here. Yes, we have been friends for so long, professionally, just great colleagues. And my name is Celeste Stacey. I am known in my circles as the must-have mentor because I teach entrepreneurs and business professionals how to create their own economy by becoming absolute must-haves for the clients they want. And that's even if they haven't had a client in months, even if they're just starting out. A little bit about my background. I have a background in business intelligence. I'm a business intelligence analyst, and I am a mindset coach. So between those two things, I kind of read people for a living. That's what I'm paid to do. I served corporate for over 20 years. Served Fortune 500, public sector, higher education in my field, helping them become more profitable by better understanding their customers. And I use those very same techniques, and I share those same techniques to teach entrepreneurs and business professionals how to become a must-have. And that's without having to build a brand, that's without having to write books. That's without having to be like a social media superstar and all those things that we believe we need to do first, which especially now, we do not have the luxury or the time to do. So it's all about creating your own economy. So that kind of brings me to what I want to talk about.
This is another reason why these conversations are so interesting.
Yes.
Because here we are, we've been friends for more than 2 decades, and we've literally seen each other grow up to where we are today.
Yes.
And that catching up is very different, right? Even though that deep friendship is there, that connection is there, but we've both grown dramatically to where we were when we first met. So
Absolutely.
This is amazing.
Yes.
Absolutely amazing to see you.
Yes, that's why I just love you, Monsoor. We used to tease, and Monsoor used to call me his mini me. So yes, we've seen each other grow, and it's just been such an amazing pleasure. And yeah, it's like you've built your brand, you've done so many things, and in this economy, like we don't have the luxury to have the time to do those things. So I teach, if you have them, you get there a lot faster. But I teach entrepreneurs how to really create their own economy using what they know, what they've lived through, what they can do. And they're absolutely doing that. And that's without having those things, those being an online superstar. The students I work with, the clients I work with, they literally never heard of me before their first contact with me, their first encounter.
Right.
Yeah, so that's what I want to talk about today.
It's fantastic. So you're kind of doing very similar things. It's bringing that inner greatness out of people. It's already there. And you are basically helping them do that. That's fantastic. So let's talk about your issues.
Yes. Wait, I'm sorry, what did you say, Mansoor?
I said, let's talk about the things that you want to talk about.
Yes, I want to talk about, since we're talking about cybersecurity, and I'm talking cybersecurity with DrCybersecurity.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I want to kind of talk about the parallels between cybersecurity, which is, protecting your information assets from outside threats, and financial security, creating your own economy and protecting that from outside threats like COVID-19. And what we're seeing now, we're seeing people absolutely devastated financially. in their businesses, in their lives. And really what it boils down to. I want to hear your opinion of what you think it boils down to, and let's get the conversation going.
Right. Well, the key thing that you hit upon is that independence and getting control of your business and life and everything. In cybersecurity, even though people think it's about securing is only a small aspect of it. It's also about perpetual innovation. It's about building yourself up, continuously improving, and then taking control of your life, income, and everything. Because you don't want to be in a situation where you're laid off and you have nowhere to go. And guess what? You're also losing your health insurance, which is another ridiculous thing. Why should health insurance be tied to my job? I mean, that's a crazy way to basically subjugate people. To me, that has always been a very crazy thing. So I have built that brand simply to be able to walk away. And then cybersecurity, to me, I see is as the modern business discipline. So if you think about how when we were running those companies, we were building all those companies, what were we doing? We were using digital strategy to build those companies. So in other words, today, digital strategy drives those companies anyway. So we really don't need financial officers to be running those companies. Similarly, in our personal life, it's no longer just about finance. It's about how can we control the digital usage in our personal lives also. So that same thing that has happened in the business world has also happened in the personal world. That's how I see the parallel. What do you think?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And right now, more than ever, we can't rely on things like brick and mortars anymore. And even in serving companies, I mean, I ran a business for close to a decade serving these companies, retired from it. And so now, we have to leverage, first of all, the power of social media, and we have to leverage what we know and can do, because if we really think about it, we are expertise and gifts for hire.
Correct.
So without us, these companies would be nothing, right?
100%. This
100%.
Most people do not realize the power they hold, because what has happened, and I just discovered this with my last 7 to 8 years in academia. I just realized that the people who are producing the money have no power in academia. The people that have the power are the people who are basically overhead.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You got all kinds of people. They don't teach. They're just doing financial management. And you have the same kinds of people in corporate America also, in every organization. They don't produce the value, yet they take away an extraordinary portion of the value while leaving the actual producers of the value at subsistence levels. Mm-hmm. Well, those producers of the value really have to get control of their own lives and value. They have to recognize, wait a minute, without me, you have no academic program. So if you're not treating me right, if you're not giving me the empowerment to do the job properly, I have no reason to stay. I have plenty of places to go. And oh, by the way, if you have developed your financial independence, you can walk. And that is also how you can stay prepared for a layoff, right? And exactly. I think that I've done that.
Yes.
Everybody should.
You sure have. Exactly. If you are not in control of either you are in control of your income or your outcome, or somebody else is.
And I like that you said you are in control of your income and outcome. I love that statement. I love that statement.
Exactly. That's what it's all about, Mansoor. That's the bottom line.
Yes.
Being in control of your income and outcome. And if you are not.
This is why I love to have my friends on my show.
Yeah, I'm very passionate about that. It's like, it's no joke out there. We are not playing out there.
No, we shouldn't.
Yeah.
Because we're the ones who are producing the value.
Exactly.
I mean, the funniest thing that in one of my last jobs, I was bringing in $117 million a year. All right.
Yep.
But I was on a contract that could be terminated at the whim of any executive. And it was. They had a mass layoff. But guess what happened to the university? It is in shambles. All right? They thought that once you do the layoff, we would come back and crawl and maybe take a pay cut and all that. But I said, okay, you laid me off, I'll walk. I'll take it. I'll take the layoff.
Yeah.
Let me run it. And guess what happened? Students are still complaining to this day.
Oh my goodness.
That program is now about $30 million. From 117 million, it is down to 30 million now.
Crazy. Crazy. Yeah.
And they're actually calling me to say, hey, can you help us with some promotions? And can I invite you to one of our conferences? Would you keynote? Would you speak? And I'm saying, I said, wait a minute, you guys just laid me off. Why do you want my promotion?
Crazy. And the scary part about that, Mansoor, is that despite all this expertise, all these gifts that we all have, there are people who still believe that they're at the mercy of the economy.
Yes.
They don't know that you can create your own economy. They
Yes.
don't know that.
Yes.
Kind of like when you're in a cubicle or something, you have your head down and you're working on a computer.
Right.
All you have to do is like stand up to see there's a whole world
Right.
above those walls.
Right.
And people are so focused on getting inside those walls because they feel they have to.
Right.
They don't realize that they're the value. They're the gold.
They're the value. They're the ones producing the profit.
Exactly. Unbelievable.
Yes. And it's also funny that they don't even negotiate their compensation based on the value they bring. So this was another thing why I think you and I both recognize that the branding is the key. Because if my brand is strong, guess what? Everybody wants a piece of it. The number of times I get invited to contribute to some certificate or something. Would I be on their advisory board? And sometimes these are not even paid. And I'm thinking, all right, so you're going to use my brand and my value to promote your thing, and you're going to make money. How do I fit in? And then moment I associate my brand with whatever it is that you're doing, if you're doing bad things, it will reflect bad on me. Mm-hmm. So unless I am in control of the product, most often I will not lend my brand to something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely.
And that's the other thing that I want people to understand. Too many people are giving away their work for free. They're contributing in journals. They're going out to speak and they're not getting paid. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, you just spoke. They charged sometimes several $1,000s for people to hear you speak, and you got paid nothing. Why would you do that? You see?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And people don't recognize that.
Yeah.
They don't negotiate.
Yeah, I 100% agree. It's there is a way to show your value without, giving it all away. And by absolutely focusing on core things that a lot of people miss or misinterpret. With your cybersecurity, your unique focus and what makes you so fantastic is that you focus on the people.
Yes.
Regardless, it's not about cybersecurity. Sure, those technical tactics, although that coding, all that stuff is important, but it's the people that keep that thing going.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people miss or misinterpret what it takes for people to trust them with their time, their money, their business. And because of that, they are vying and competing in a sea of people right now who are unemployed, who are looking for the very, very same opportunities and clients. And they feel desperate. They feel like they're chasing because they don't know the right thing to focus on to absolutely show their value. So yeah, I absolutely agree that it's important that you take the reins and you take control, because if you don't, somebody else will.
Right, right, right. So Celeste, one more final thought or question from you, because we're getting close to when I have to bring in my next guest, but we have had a fantastic conversation. What else? This was delightful.
Yes, very, very delightful. Sure. Can you speak more about building your brand?
The building of the brand. Well, you kind of have done that too. I mean, look at the glitzy photos that you've taken. So that's part of it, right? Branding, you gotta take those photos and then show that up. But the key thing is really connecting with people, surrounding yourself with lots and lots of passionate people who are also going to promote your brand. So building the brand starts with that, the values. And so communicating and having that network of people who are going to believe in your work and promote your work. And then living those values, sharing those examples. So you never can be so high up that nobody can ever touch you or talk to you. You have to be accessible. So when I go to speak, I am always networking. So I spend a lot of time networking, because to me, leadership is more about sharing my knowledge and empowering others so that they can be successful. And the moment I share my knowledge, guess what? I have built my brand, because I have created one more connection who's going to believe in me and believe in my work and then support my work. So that is the nutshell thing. But I mean, of course, you got to write, you got to speak, you got to do all of those things. But at the basic level, that's what it is.
Well, thank you, Mansoor.
Thank you very much. It was outstanding to talk to you, and we will network at the networking end. And now I'm going to bring in my very good friend, Dr. Calvin Nobles.
Mansoor, thank you very much for having me on your show tonight. I'm glad I'm here. And I always watch your show, even though you don't know I watch. I'll be watching because some of the conversations are excellent, especially like the young lady that just provided us a great piece of information about branding and how to value yourself. So a little about me. I recently retired from the U.S. Navy in October of 2017. I transitioned directly into corporate America in the financial service sector. And there I work as a cybersecurity strategy, a policy analyst. I do a little bit of everything. And I kind of like working that way because I get exposed to different things. And it also allow me to continue my learning. You know, I'm a huge lifelong learner, continuing to further my knowledge and become an expert in some things such as cybersecurity leadership. And of course, you know, I'm a huge fan of human factors in cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but to give me the opportunity just to help others, especially when we talk about minorities in cybersecurity, which is still a problem. You know, the numbers are just not where they really need to be. And as a whole, when we talk about such a shortage of cybersecurity professionals, but yet we have a huge sector that's not invited to the cybersecurity dance. So I want to be a part of that, help correct that and help fix that, and to help make sure that, you know, women and other minorities are given an opportunity to participate in this fabulous career, to be honest with you.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Great.
So, that was a fantastic introduction. I love your work, as you probably know. We are probably mutual admirers. I'm a big admirer of yours. I listen to you, and I know that we have cited each other's work many times. So that's wonderful.
Absolutely. You know, and I remember us being down in Miami together at the at the NICE Expo, and that was a great opportunity. I did not know so many people were going to be attending my session about, you know, the need for psychology-based professionals in cybersecurity. And I continue to make that argument. And I sit every day. I get a lot of phone calls from a lot of CEOs, CIOs, and Chief Information Security Officer and Technology Officer calling me, asking me, you know, how can they integrate a piece of technology to make their operations run a little smoother? And my first answer, you know what my response is? Focus on the people first. So
very nice. See, Celeste, this is what I was talking about. Surrounding yourself with people that kind of can enhance your voices and things like that. And a lot of it is co-branding too.
Yes, absolutely. So in 2019, I traveled around the country, getting invited to different conferences. And yes, people will pay for you to travel to conferences and and give you stipends and everything else when you travel. And I had the opportunity to speak to hundreds, if not thousands, of senior executives across the country about human factors and human performance in cybersecurity, because we continue to lag behind other industries. And what's unique about cybersecurity is that we're a multidiscipline type domain and profession that was born out of many other different professions. And so there are already some foundational things that we can be using when it comes to human performance. For instance, I got some research I'm doing now on cybersecurity burnout. And that's a big concern because
that's a great topic.
Exactly.
Yes, burnout is happening because all these unethical administrators literally burning out people, especially with this remote working, right? They almost feel like, oh, because you're working from home, you should be working 24 hours.
Right. Absolutely. You know, research tells us that when you're remote working, that you work more. And I see it firsthand because I work remote 100% of the time. So while my colleagues are commuting from work, I'm still at work. I'm the guy that's getting that late phone call or that late email. So that, you know, that takes time away from me, my personal time, because I'm on the phone or I'm responding to an email late at night. So remote work can be challenging. And we have to be very mindful of how it impacts our personal time, even though we want to do the right thing, but it definitely can creep up on you and take away and diminish your personal time.
So do you have any questions or topics that you want to talk about with me?
Absolutely. One of the things that I keep coming across in my travels and in my discussions is how little CIOs and chief information security officers and senior executives know about human factors. You know as well as I know, human factors been around a long time, but we keep disregarding them in cyber. And I can't put my hand on why. I think one of the reasons is a lack of education. But human factors can bring business value to organizations if they grasp it the correct way. And I just have a hard time understanding why it's not what I'll call one of the primary domain topics rather than, you know, a second tier or third tier topic for senior executives.
Yeah, well, see, the thing is that even though your research and your interest is on the human factor side, to me, human factor is the whole cybersecurity domain. All right, so that could be one thing that I would recommend that you think about, because most often when you start talking about the human factor to the administrators, they're thinking, oh, how do I control these humans? Because they're thinking that the people are their biggest threat, and I've heard them say that. You see, but I don't even talk about human factors. You see, what I talk about is, what is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is people-powered perpetual innovation. So it's all about the people. So you see, once you say human factors, it suddenly puts them in a box, in a pigeonhole. I wouldn't recommend doing that. I never did that, even though if you think about, I'm always talking about human factors. That's what my platform is on. That's what my doctoral degree was on. But that's when I also learned that cybersecurity is more about people than it is about technology. And that's what I wrote in the book, right? Because people choose the technology. People configure the technology. You see? So it's not about controlling people. It's about empowering people. It's about setting them free to innovate and do the right thing. And so if we have a layoff culture, we will never solve this issue, because even then, what happens? If you're laying off people, you're flushing out your most valuable intellectual property. Okay? You're flushing out innovation. And any employee who has the threat of layoff on them will never innovate. And if they do innovate, they're not going to give you that innovation.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And one of the changes that I recently made, you know, in the past, I used to just call it human factors. I made a slight change to it. I call it human factors engineering, because it is a scientific discipline, but it just doesn't get a lot of appreciation, because you're exactly right. As soon as you say human factors, people automatically equate it to what the humans are doing, what they should not be doing. And so it's kind of irritated that, you got this scientific discipline that's been around for about 60, 70 years, and it get watered down to just human mistakes. So I tell a lot of senior executives that human weaknesses and human mistakes are a byproduct of not having human factors engineering incorporated into your operations.
Mm-hmm. So when you start talking about that, do you put the context? So for example, do you share the cybersecurity model? Do you share the definition of cybersecurity I provided with this people, policy, technology, perpetual innovation, all of that thing? Because again, if you don't put it in that context and you just start talking about, I think this is something that I mentioned to you actually at the NICE conference. I mentioned that you should preface your talk first, explain what is cybersecurity. Because see, most people still do not know cybersecurity. So anytime you have an opportunity, explain the model, explain the definition, and then go into this, how do we empower the people? How do we engage the people? And how do we build that culture of perpetual innovation, which is what cybersecurity is?
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that, because you just gave me a great segue, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about human factors engineering, it's really about optimizing the system design so that you can optimize human performance. And that in itself leads to fewer human errors and fewer human vulnerabilities. But it's, as well as I know, that is a hard pill to sell when you got up against so much technology, you're up against so many other competing requirements. But I'll be honest with you, back in 2015, when I first started talking about human factors in cybersecurity, I was very skeptical, because people were looking at me and gave me some crazy looks and made me I was feeling insecure. I'm gonna be honest with you. And then all of a sudden now.
To me also, when I started talking about leadership and the people aspect, they thought I was insane. This happened in 2005, 2006, around that time, which is why around 2010 is when I started to go on the speaking circuit myself. I said, as long as I am on the audience, people are gonna think I'm crazy. But when I start to build my brand and I start to speak out on it and I explain things in lucid manners and I start to have a following, things will change. And now things have changed. Cybersecurity leadership is no longer a side thing or something of a surprise. As a matter of fact, I'm actually known as a cybersecurity leader, and a lot of people, other people are now beginning to claim that they are also cybersecurity leaders, even though they don't still understand this discipline, because they will talk about that and immediately go into controls, security controls.
Yes. Yes.
And that includes the control of the humans.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I want to bring up another point that you brought up earlier when we were talking about basically digital transformation. So I was doing some research a couple of weeks ago, and I came across this very interesting article, and it talked about how the role of the chief information officer and the chief information security officer, those roles are changing because there's so much digitalization and that transformation that's going on within our spaces. And they was talking about adding in roles like the chief data officer, the chief. They also mentioned the chief learning officer, the chief innovation officer. So to me, I like to hear that, because that tells me that our space, the cybersecurity domain, is expanding and taking on a more central role and a more critical role. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I believe that they're still playing whack-a-mole, because they realize they have a big problem on their hands. They still don't know what the solution is.
Right.
And the real solution isn't creating a chief data officer or elevating the CIO. The real solution is replacing the CEOs with some of the strategic CIOs of today.
Yeah.
If you think about my situation or even your situation, you could actually run the company through your cybersecurity strategy. I could run any company today with the cybersecurity strategy. That's what needs to happen. Any place where I served as a CIO, I could have been the CEO. Yes, I would have had to hire a chief financial officer or some accountant to help me with that aspect. But you see, running a company isn't about balancing the budget. Running a company is about digital strategy, creating value out of that beautiful harmony of humans and technology and connections, because it's all of that together. This is no longer about finance. 1980s was about finance. That's why we needed the MBA schools. But you see, MBA schools today are obsolete.
Yes.
They're teaching obsolete stuff that were created in the 1970s. So what I did in the master's programs and the programs that I developed is I put in all those business principles, the innovation principles, and created this new breed of leaders who are essentially going to create that harmony of everything: people, technology, the connections, the perpetual connections, and the global reach to create this incredible amounts of value. That's where we are today. The typical CEO trained in an MBA school, unless they come back and get a master's degree from one of my programs, they're not equipped to lead the modern organization. You actually saw that when some of these big breaches happened, particularly with the Equifax situation.
Yes.
When that CEO came on TV, you could clearly see that he was out of his league.
Yeah.
He couldn't talk about that. And you think about a company like Equifax, how do they lose the key ingredients that drive their business? Those were the crown jewels of the organization.
Yes.
My own information was breached in that. So that's another reason why I feel so passionate about all this, because these people who really are not capable of running the modern companies are running the modern companies and basically ruining our lives.
Yes, absolutely. And what you're talking about here is when you see like academia having such strong hold on things like their traditional business programs. And that's one of the reasons why I like teaching in the MBA program, is so we can talk about technology, we can talk about innovation, and we can talk about bringing it all together, because the current business executive today has this understanding that technology is the way. And as we know, technology is not the way. You know, it's technology is just an enabler, but the real enabler is people. And you know, being able to lead people and motivate and influence them will get you a lot further than spending $5 million on a piece of technology.
Yep.
Absolutely.
So this has been an absolutely amazing discussion with you. Once again, it was wonderful to catch up with you. And it is time now to talk with Dr. Rod Arthur.
Thank you.
Thank you, excuse me, Dr. Mansour. My name is Dr. Rod Arthur. Actually, this is my very first time on Dr. Mansour's show. And again, thank you for having me, Dr. Mansour. I actually am somewhat of a newcomer to cybersecurity. I've only really been in cyber for maybe a little over a year and a half, actually. And I found it extremely tough to get into the field, even after I achieved a bachelor's and a master's degree. I sort of went into the doctorate program from a different angle, as opposed to my doctoral classmates. Most of my doctoral classmates that went into the doctor program had already 10, 15 years of experience in cybersecurity.
I see, okay.
I myself came into the doctoral program with 15 years of support experience. So I had very little cybersecurity experience. And even after I achieved the doctorate degree, I found it still somewhat hard to get into the field. It seems that when you have a doctorate, it seems like people look at you as having more theoretical knowledge than practical knowledge.
Yes.
So what I did actually was, while I was going after the doctorate, I was also trying to get practical experience, doing labs, working in Cali and virtual machine, and hacking my other virtual machines and things like that. So my question to you is, what do you think is the best avenue for anyone to get into cybersecurity? What do you think?
Well, again, it depends on the level. So at your level, it will be very different. So in some ways, I would be a good example of somebody who started out, say, in network engineering, then went into information technology, doing essentially transformations of organizations, building companies through those strategies. But then at some point I realized that, wait a minute, technology is not just a small aspect of the business anymore. It is the business. And when that transformation happens, I wanted to be at these CEO types of levels, and I found out that I couldn't. So the thing that you faced is something similar that I faced, which is that I was working as a CIO, and that is actually a good gig. But 50% of US companies, and probably worldwide companies, I did the research in the US companies, so I know the US statistics, 50% of US companies have their CIO reporting to the CFO. That is like a bus driver driving an airplane without a flying license.
Right.
All right. So I saw that, and even situations where I pre-negotiated, where I was being brought in as the CIO, and they had designed the job to report to the CFO. And I said, look, I would never report to the CFO because I'm happy if the CFO reports to me, because the digital strategy will drive the organization anyway, not the financial strategy, right? You cannot have the budget driving the company.
That's correct.
The company has a mission. I would develop the digital strategy around that mission, and then we would have to find the money to support that. If we don't have the money, we will create a multi-year plan. We will raise money, we will find money. I mean, money is a completely different thing. Money should never drive the strategy, right?
Correct.
So what I found out is that being a CIO, I would never change the world. I would never change anything. So my recommendation to you is similar to what I did, which is that you start building your own brand, go on a speaking circuit, start writing books, start sharing the knowledge and explaining to people what cybersecurity truly is, that it is the modern business strategy. So this is, and if you think about what has happened over the last 7 years or so as I've been doing this, I have started to get invited to bigger and bigger venues. So the voice is getting amplified. And what is also happening is that I went to academia to produce thousands of graduates after my image. Because see, I alone cannot change the world. To change the world, I will need to create lots and lots of people who believe in similar things, who understand similar things, and are passionate to make a difference. That's what I need. So I have started to create those kinds of people. So once again, you have your sphere of influence. You'll have to start building your circle of friends around that who will continue to amplify your voices. So all my graduates, you see, I am still their mentor. They have graduated 3, 4, 5 years ago. I'm still their mentor. Anytime they can call me and all that. Why? Because without that mutual support, this will never work. I need them to be successful. I need them to be exceptionally successful. And I've even told all my students that I want you to one day be the CEO that we need. Do not stop at being a CIO or a CISO. That should never be your end, because I have already created that brain in you and empowered that brain in you to be the modern CEO that the modern company needs. And some of them are there. Some of them are getting there. Many of them are starting businesses of their own because they realize that working for somebody else who doesn't know the modern business is not the right way. Education is a big way to enable. If we continue to teach people the right way, this is why I spend so much time volunteering, because I know a lot of people don't have the money, especially students, but I volunteer a lot of my time. I create these kinds of forums that bring them in, expose their work, I organize things. So 6 of my graduates are now actually going on what I'm calling a global tour. You've probably seen some marketing on that. I have created this thing, and what we're doing over there is we're literally changing the game of how to do conference presentations, because many conference presentations are boring. All right, they have this slides and they start reading from the slides, and all the time they're going ooh all this. I'm like, what is this? If people are going to pay to hear you speak, you should learn to speak, and do not read from PowerPoints. We don't need that. So what did I do to solve the problem? I mentored some of my graduates, and I know that they have the energy, they have the creativity. Some of them are musicians, some of them are singers, some of them are poets, some of them produce games. So guess what they're going to do? They're going to teach us how to teach cybersecurity using all these fun things.
Which brings me to another, sorry for cutting you off. Which sort of brings me to another question. I've read some articles regarding a doctoral degree in cybersecurity, and I've seen some articles which say that there's really no need for a doctorate in cybersecurity. What do you do? What is your thoughts on the benefits of having a doctorate in cybersecurity? What do you think? What is your thoughts?
Absolutely. So think about who are teaching in the classrooms today, who are teaching in so almost every university today has a cybersecurity program because it's a big moneymaker. But who's teaching? Do you know that there are some people with PhDs in English and no job experiences teaching cybersecurity?
Now, why is that?
That is why we need real Doctor of Science holders, real doctoral degree holders in the field who also have job experiences in the field. Why is that? Because most people don't vet, most students don't vet that. They have this understanding that, oh, if it's a university with a big name and all that, surely they're hiring qualified people. But you see what is happening in many universities are that if there is a program that is dying, so sometimes say they have a program that has reduced enrollment. So some faculty from those programs, instead of laying them off, they'll put them in some kind of program like cybersecurity. Oh, we're starting this new program. Why don't you go teach there? And that's sort of the way it has happened. And some of people are picking up books and they're reading from books. I've actually had PhDs in English try to explain to me cybersecurity. And it's very painful.
I'm sure. Well, you know, it's funny because my dissertation was on detecting evasive botnets. Mm-hmm. That was what I wrote about for my dissertation. And currently I work in a SOC. So I feel like I'm in the right place to get the practical experience. I feel like I've learned quite a bit theoretically. Of course, you never know everything, of course. Mm-hmm. But I figure now I can sort of merge the theory with the practical experience. And I have found where my doctorate was helpful in that respect, where I was able to detect certain things that other people missed.
Yeah, see, your doctoral degree, that was the other reason. So we need it for the academics, but we also need for the science. So Calvin talked about the data scientist role, the chief data officer role, and those kinds of roles. So you talk about healthcare and all these, I mean, every company is producing gobs and gobs of data. And these data are actually gold mines, right? You need to be able to create new knowledge from this data, this information that could not only inform your decision making, but also give you new strategy. Who's going to do that? That's another reason why we need these doctoral degree holders. Because if you think about every pharmaceutical company, don't they have researchers in medicine? Well, who's going to do the research in information? This is not just computer science. We have a lot of PhDs in computer science, and they're great for programming and all that. But who is going to do the research in this cybersecurity field? And one of the things about cybersecurity is that it enables the mission. It is a mission driver. So that is what, when we analyze data, we're analyzing the data as to what it means for the organizational business. So that's why I was talking with Celeste even, that it has now become the business discipline. It is the business discipline of the future. That's what cybersecurity is.
And this is why you now have CISOs that's sitting at the table with the board members.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, this is fantastic. What else?
So my question also, what do you think is probably the most effective way to get into cybersecurity? Degrees or certifications? Because certifications basically give you a practical knowledge of cyber, whereas the degrees probably of a more overall education wise, you know, teach you communication, things like that. You have some people that say it's best to get a certification and call it a day. And then you have some that say you should have the degree so that you have a more overall education. What is your thoughts on that?
I think that none of them are the right way. The first thing that I would recommend, and that is why I wrote the book Cybersecurity Leadership, before people spend any money, they should go to my website and at least listen to the first chapter of my book, which is free, doesn't cost anybody anything.
I actually did that.
Okay? So if somebody likes that, then they can, if they don't have too much money, the ebook is only $5 on Amazon. Spend that, go through it, because it will be like a cookbook for future. Then figure out, okay, which aspect of this field appeals to you? Because even if you get a certificate or a degree or whatever, you still have to figure out where in this field you want to play. Do you want to play in the technology area? Do you want to play in the policy area? What are your natural inclinations? Right? So my book gives you the broad understanding of the field itself, right? Then you have to figure out, okay, maybe you were in the nursing field previously. Aha, you were in healthcare. So maybe you want to focus on that healthcare sector, and maybe you want to deal with all those patient records or whatever. And now you're narrowing it down. You've identified a vertical and all that. Now you have to look for the degree that will help you get to your goal. So you see, I am not a big believer in doing anything until you have determined where do you want to go? What's your goal? Where do you want to go? Right? Why did I get to the doctoral degree? I was already a pretty good cybersecurity professional. I had been a CIO for 12 years when I went to the doctoral degree. My goal at that time was to make my mark in academia. I wanted to develop master's program, bachelor's program, doctoral programs that would literally be needed, because I was seeing it's not there. I had that particular goal, and so therefore I went and found the right doctoral program that allowed me to maintain my job and not give up my job, et cetera, and it had to be online. And so people have to define that goals. I think that is the most important thing.
Yeah, you know, it was funny because I sat in the doctoral class with people like yourself that were CIOs, CISOs, and held major positions in the cybersecurity. And here I am, support technician with no cybersecurity experience, sitting among all these folks, and I started to feel somewhat out of place, you know? So it was a little bit intimidating, but of course, as you get to know the other folks and network with them, I got a more broader understanding. So it was a good thing. I feel like I kind of came in on and a different angle than a lot of people like yourself came in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You may have done it for the academic value of it.
I did it for both, actually.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Academic value and, I'm sorry, go ahead.
And perhaps your brand, because the doctoral degree also gave you a brand.
Yes.
Putting that doctor in front of your name creates a lot of value to your personal brand. And just Joe Blow cannot argue with you about cybersecurity because your voice will always carry higher weight. You have a doctor of science in the field. So no PhD in English could really argue with you about what is right about cybersecurity, right?
True.
That was another thing. That's the main reason why I always got certifications also, because it was a defensive mode. It had to be part of my brand. So anytime, as I grew in my career and we used change technologies, I also continued to earn appropriate certifications. I was one of the world's first certified network engineers, CNEs. If you remember those, we don't find them anymore, right?
Yeah.
I was also one of the world's first CCNA, whichever that Cisco certification was,
Yeah.
right?
That's still around,
Celeste
actually.
and I were working together at that time. It was actually Constellation Energy that sent me to that training, and before you know it, it was Cisco was actually offering that test for free because they had no CCNAs at that time, and I was one of the world's first to just go take the test and get the certification. So I've kept it up. I did the same thing with CISSP, PMP. I mean, I did it for credibility. So if somebody talks about project management, they can't argue with me because I have a PMP also.
Well, you know, your book on cybersecurity leadership is a great reference for aspiring CISOs.
Yes, that was another reason why I wrote it for everybody. But it was absolutely fantastic talking with you, Dr. Rod Arthur.
Thank you. A
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you for coming on. And now I'm going to bring in Dr. Henrietta Okoro. So please unmute yourself and introduce yourself for 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Mansur, for inviting me here. I'm so excited. Since I've met you, I know that you have been working really hard on the cybersecurity area. So my name is Dr. Henrietta Okoro. I'm in Maryland here. Also a Maryland State Commissioner. So I'm a Commissioner for African Affairs under Governor Larry Hogan. As well as I'm teaching in several universities, which University of Maryland Global Campus is one of them, as well as Colorado Technical University. So I also conduct doctoral studies, facilitation, going to their residency and also mentoring them on their doctoral dissertations. So I have a wealth of knowledge in telecommunication industry. I've been in the telecommunication for over 20 years in Annapolis here, Comtech Telecommunications, where we deal on SMS, short message services. Most of our clients are Verizon's, AT&T, where we service them and they will now reach out to the consumers. So we manufacture the products on your mobile phones. So we deal on short messaging and the message protocols, CDMA and TDMS, okay? So I also have academic doctors where I'm the founder and CEO, where we are promoting publications. So we have our own international journal called International Journal for Organizational Leadership, where we help publishers, researchers, professors in order to publish their research findings. So I'm also an editor there, so we always do peer reviews and a blind review on each of the papers. So I think I have a lot in my plate.
Wonderful, wonderful. What an introduction.
Now, let me stop about myself.
No. Wonderful. Thank you very much for coming. I remember meeting you probably, what, 2-3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a delightful meeting. And then I don't remember how it happened that we decided that you were going to come and we were going to chat, because this is another way for me to catch up with good friends.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What are some of the things that you want to talk about?
Absolutely. And then recently, I just got a certification with ISACA, which is the Certified Data Privacy Solutions Engineer, which is really needed right now with, just like we are talking about cybersecurity here today in relation to your book. and how we are prepared in order to address the global challenges. So as you can see, leaders are beginning to be aware of cybersecurity issues. Nobody can say we are not aware right now, but do not know what next to do. Knowing about it is one, and knowing what to do is next, right?
Yes.
So the entire issue of cybersecurity has gone from back office to front end office. So how do we address it in the front end? Today, most of the executives now pay attention, but in many cases, we still need to know what to do.
Yes. Well, education is the only way, and also bringing in, so what is happening is if the breed of executives today will not go back and re-educate themselves, which they need to desperately, then the only way to solve this is to change the executives. I don't see any other way. This is kind of what I've been telling my students also. I'm like, okay, working for somebody who's going to tell you to do the wrong thing always is never going to work. You're going to be frustrated and you're going to be blamed, because the problems have to be solved through empowerment. In other words, the right people have to be empowered. And right now, the right people aren't empowered. Right now, most companies, everything is driven by the CFO. And they use that money, even when the CIO is not reporting to the CFO, they use that money to still control everything. I've seen that in education also. The layoff that UMGC had, you just talked about that. So you're probably aware that UMGC had this massive layoff in October of last year, right? Everybody, every faculty member, every administrator was laid off all at the same time. However, not any CFO or any of the executives were laid off. It was all the faculty running 93,000 students. All right, how does that make sense?
Wow.
And October is also in the middle of the semester, because semester end was around December sometime. So you see, that is part of the problem with everywhere. You've got non-mission critical people making all these decisions that are literally changing the destiny of organizations. And that's a big problem.
Okay, I totally agree with you, Dr. Mansur, because money does not equal security.
Correct.
It does not equal security. So
Nor
I think organizations still need to, come to realize that we need the right people out there.
the people.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to learn cybersecurity from an English major. It just won't happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
thank you. Mm-hmm.
So that was your primary question. You don't have any other question?
Okay, another question I have is, I think there's need for a future IT workforce, right? For them to reevaluate because of change, things are changing rapidly, right? What happened last year is not the same this year. So there is an ongoing lack of skilled professionals to fill the unoccupied seats. And how do the government and the society help to address this issue? Because some of them might need some grants. How are we getting more grants in order to make sure that we have this IT workforce?
Well, so you mentioned government. Unfortunately, if you've noticed, government is actually reducing investments in education. That has been, at least in the US, that's what's been happening. The grants have been reduced. So a lot of the money that used to go to public universities are no longer going there. Most universities today get a very, very small portion of their whole budget from the government. So this is not necessarily a good thing, but that's essentially what's been happening. What is the solution? Once again, I believe it's a multifaceted solution. You're going to have to change university leadership and put true academics in power. You don't want MBAs running universities. That's just not good. for a university to have a president with an MBA and no doctoral degree is kind of insane, right? You don't want an MBA person to be your chief academic officer either. It's not about the money. So you need modern education. So what has happened? Most curriculum today is so obsolete, it's so sad. I know it because I've seen it. And the reason I know it is because I come from the outside world. So all of these people like Dr. Nobles, Dr. Arthur, Celeste, all of us, we have been in the real world for many, many decades. So we know what is needed. And then when we go to academia, we know that is not what's being produced, which is why all of these graduates are having a serious time finding a job. So what do you need? What you need are people like us to be running universities. You don't want a full-time academic running a university. They don't know what is required because they've never really worked in the workplace. Think about the president of a university who has never worked in the real world all their life in academia. So how do they know what is required in the real workplace? Think about a chief academic officer with the same kind of a background. They're never going to be able to design programs that are going to be useful in the real world. When I redesigned the program, so I'm not talking about this from just vaporware, right? I actually did this. So if you remember, I was at UMGC from 2016 to 2019. During that time, what did I do? Implemented a program that actually won Best Cybersecurity Higher Education Program in the USA Award 2 years in a row. And went from a $30 million program to a $117 million program. So it brought in money and students. So you see, when you produce good academics that are relevant, it can be done. And I know now that that same program is different because I'm no longer there. See, leadership is very critical. I still have students complaining to me, which is kind of ridiculous because I can't do anything about it. Because there are already changed too many things within the program that I designed that are not good for the students. See, most universities are worried about things that are necessarily good for themselves or maybe the faculty, less work. See, the way I was running the program, it was a lot of work for the faculty, but it was fantastic for the students. And that is the way education needs to be done. Too many universities have all these stupid quizzes and discussions which teach you nothing. A quiz does nothing. Instead, what did I do? I created real world projects, smaller scale versions of projects that you would see in the real world. That is the kind of education we need in every discipline. Create not just book knowledge, but practical knowledge. You will learn from the book, you will learn from the professor, but at the end of the day, you're going to produce things that are relevant to the industry. So if you're in IT, I don't want you to just know how to do this. I want you to do projects where you start to apply that knowledge. So your knowledge has to be applied, you see? And that was the difference. So what was happening, and then also to talk about it. So in my program, we would have students write PowerPoint proposals and all that and present in class, do videos and write and argue and work in teams and all these things. So we were teaching all those life success skills. That is very critical. You see, so education has to be changed completely. It has to be overhauled completely. In the last 40 years, education hasn't changed much. The other thing that has to change are these long semesters. Does it really make sense to have a 16-week semester anymore with the technology that there is out there? No, it's crazy. Why don't we shorten that? Why don't we graduate students in 2 to 3 years, maybe make it an 8-week semester with the same amount of work? It can be done. We actually did it. So that was another thing I did in the master's program. We were doing the entire master's degree in a year and a half. 36 credit hours in a year and a half. Most other programs, they're doing it in 3 years, which is crazy. Why do you need that? If a student is disciplined enough and the faculty is engaged enough, they should be able to do it. Why not make the bachelor's programs or the 3 credit programs 8 weeks long? It can be done. My doctoral program, 3 credits, was 8 weeks long. Personally, I found that it could be done in 6. I used to finish in about 6 weeks. So you see, we have to rethink education. And then the other thing is that even during this COVID, one of the things that I learned is that a lot of faculty had never logged into their their curriculum management system, okay? And I'm thinking, really, how is that even possible? Because without using some technology in the classroom, it doesn't matter what you're teaching, you have to use technology. It's not just about me giving the same boring lecture year after year after year. That's crazy. And I also hear, now I'm also hearing this, oh my God, we cannot have online education because online education is horrible. I'm actually hearing these TV pundits talking about that, which really pissed me off because these people have never designed online programs and they're opining on TV and it doesn't make any sense, right? Because when you do an online program, the whole program has to be rethought. It's not taking that boring lecture and just putting it online, because if the lecture was boring to begin with, when you put it online, it's going to be even more boring, right? What else? That was a great question. Do you have any other questions, Dr. Okoro?
Okay, my next question here is, with this COVID pandemic that we are now, it has already increased the global connections through the Internet of Things, right? So will the incident of attack, right? So the more we expose, the more attacks. So now, and you know, some people who are not used to all these internet connections and everything, they will be prey to some of this. So how are we trying to carry along everybody in the global connection?
Are you talking about at the personal level or at the organizational level?
Both, because remember, an employee who is using his or his device to connect to organization, and if you're being attacked, then you can now connect it to your job. So it's about the user and the organization, because the user can be anywhere and get infected, which will automatically affect the organization.
Right. So this is not necessarily an issue for COVID or anything like that, because the perimeter of the organization had vanished a long time ago. I wrote about that in my book also. Actually, when I was with Constellation Energy, it was a far-flung organization. When I was with the Baltimore City Health Department, again, far-flung. When I was with the University of Maryland system, again, far-flung. So I always assumed that there is no perimeter. And I never did any strategy based on a perimeter. So organizations that have designed their environment and their systems and everything, thinking that they're going to keep the bad people out by putting this wall, they are having problems because they never thought about it. This is why I kept saying that the people are the most important. That means you have already had the wrong people determining the strategy. So for example, the other day I was interviewed by Health IT News, and they were talking about, what do you do with this disaster recovery and business continuity now? I said, look, the time to think about disaster recovery and business continuity is long before it happens. After it happens, you don't have a whole lot of things, because if you didn't plan it, you're going to have a major problem in your hands. So when I was CIO and everything, we used to do all these things and drills every year, sometimes twice a year. So this thing has to be thought about. So again, you need the right people, right, with the right knowledge to do it at the corporate level. At the personal level, once again, it's about elevating your level of knowledge of all the systems that you're using and learn to use it better. Because just like driving a car is no longer like not an option. I mean, not knowing how to drive a car is no longer an option, right? You have to know. It is part of our life. So therefore, technology, all these things that we use to make ourselves productive and innovative and useful and all that, it's a part of our life. So it is an obligation for us to know more about those things. There are YouTube videos, there are all kinds of places that you can learn. So this is the other thing. Knowledge is freely available to such an amazing extent, and yet so few people take advantage of it. It's amazing. So I think that's what is needed, really. I'm doing the same thing. I mean, just because I'm a cybersecurity professional doesn't mean I'm better protected. I wouldn't be better protected if I don't continuously learn and evolve and innovate. I am doing that all the time.
Exactly.
So that is it. But this has been an absolutely amazing conversation. What I'm going to do is I am going to stop the recording, and then we're going to go in the unrecorded networking portion of the event.
Okay, thank you very much for having me here. Thank you.